This is why you should never let your Uber driver cancel your ride while you're still in the car. I went dancing with some friends one night and got really drunk by midnight. My phone was dead and I was so drunk that I barely remember my friend calling me an Uber. I can vaguely remember them helping me in the car and telling me to get home safe. That's when he asked me how my night was and if I smoked. At this point, I sort of just slurred out that I did sometimes. He then offered me a J, and this is when I started to get nervous and started paying attention. I tell him something like I'm really tired and just ready to go home. He keeps insisting, and once again I say something not exactly like no, but not a yes, which he takes as a yes. I'm so drunk I can barely see straight or speak clearly. That's when he says, okay, I have to cancel the ride really quick because I can't give it to you while I'm on the clock. It takes me a second to realize how dangerous that is, and by the time I start to say something, he's canceled the ride and pulled over in the middle of nowhere. At this point, I'm panicking, I'm taking fake hits, and I'm thinking to myself how I can get out of this situation. After it's done, I tell him I can always call another Uber and he doesn't have to take me home. But he says he still has my address and he'll take me. As he starts driving, I tell myself to calm down and that I'm being paranoid. But that's when I realize he's going farther north and passing every exit that could get me back to my apartment. Part 2 of why you should never let your Uber driver cancel the ride before it's over. As he passes the 4th exit, I'm thinking of how I can get him to take me home. That's when I tell him that my boyfriend is waiting on me. My driver said nothing, but he took the next exit and made a giant U-turn taking me home. Even as we're heading south, I'm still shaking and have my hand on the door handle, thinking about just hopping out at a red light the closer we get to my apartment. My phone is completely dead, but we're getting close to my apartment now. So once we get about 2 blocks from my apartment, I lie and tell him that it's easiest to stop here and he can let me out. Again, he doesn't say anything, but he does slow the car. I'm flooded with relief and even maybe a smile, but when I go to open the door, it's locked. I try to lift the lock mechanism manually, but it won't budge. I look at him to see what's up and he's got his head turned almost fully toward me, shoulders still facing the road, smiling at me. The worst fucking smile I've ever seen. It looked so mocking and it just did not reach his eyes at all. I just started crying and asking him to open the door. I was so freaked out and still very drunk, and thank God he did. I will never forget that sensation of vulnerability, not just being drunk in his car, but with no way to contact anyone. It was terrifying.
When my daughter was born, she had dark skin and looked like her parents could be of African descent. My husband was furious and accused me of cheating and left right then and there. He told everyone on both sides of the family what happened and wanted a divorce. Then his friends and families all called me to say how upset they were and called me really nasty names. My mother was by my side the entire time as I kept professing my innocence. He refused to pick me up from the hospital, threw my stuff out on the lawn, and changed the locks. When my sister called to get the baby stuff, he texted her a picture of a bare nursery room and said he got rid of everything. He even destroyed my art studio. Eventually, he agreed to do a paternity test and he was 100% the father. No one could believe this, so he did it again and he was the dad. One of his cousins did the ancestry thing and found out there was 30% of African in their family. This made Jim's paternal great-grandmother admit to having an affair around the same time Jim's grandfather was born, and because he could pass as hers, she just assumed her husband was the father. Since then, he's been reaching out and everyone has come to apologize. I told him I needed time and he asked to see the baby and I let him, but I'm too afraid to physically hand her to him. I've never cheated and have been 100% innocent all this time. Am I the asshole for not wanting to give him a second chance? When my parents decided to get a divorce, I chose to stay with my dad. He was more financially stable, and he also promised to take care of me in the future and help me go through college as long as I graduated. When my grandmother from my mother's side passed away, I received a $30,000 inheritance, and recently my grandfather from my father's side passed away and left me with $50,000 as well. I was also working part-time jobs, and with all of that, I was able to save enough to comfortably put me through my 4 years of school. One day, my mom surprised my stepsister and bought her a brand new car. I was kind of shocked because it was way out of their budget because I knew they were struggling financially. When I looked at my bank account, I saw that a majority of my money was missing. I have my mom on all of my accounts because she wanted to monitor to make sure I don't spend too much money. I never would have thought she would have taken this and paid for my stepsister's car. Her reasoning was that my stepsister had a brighter future and had a bigger possibility of going to an Ivy League school and providing for us in the future. Well, I, a student who gets mostly B's and C's, would just take over the family business, so I didn't really need it and I could always work in the future. When I was 15, I was head over heels for this boy. We were together for almost a year, but most people didn't know, behind closed doors, he was very abusive. I was already dealing with my own problems at home, and with this abuse, everything just piled up. And then one day I found out I was pregnant, and I wanted to keep the baby. Keep in mind I was 15 and had mental issues going on as well. But then when my parents found out, they were furious with me and my boyfriend. One day when I was looking for something, I saw my mom's computer about me being transferred. I didn't think much of it, and I just brushed it off. After a really good day at school, I came home to 2 strangers telling me to pack up and we had to leave. I was extremely terrified and they grabbed me and my parents were nowhere in sight. A few plane rides later, we were in North Carolina for a wilderness program. I cried for days not knowing how to deal with the pain of being alone and pregnant. When the snow started coming in, I eventually got hypothermia and I fainted and I rolled down the hill. I was so scared when I woke up and kept asking how my baby was. I was bleeding badly and I was told I lost my child. From then, I blamed my parents because they knew this would happen. I became stronger and stronger and finished my time at the wilderness program before a year later I returned. When I was 27, my boyfriend proposed to me. We both have stable jobs and decided to plan the wedding immediately. Around the same time, my brother proposed to his 24-year-old girlfriend and they started planning for the wedding as well. One day, my future sister-in-law called me to see if we can go over wedding planning. That's when she told me if I could get married in the afternoon and that she could get married an hour or two later and then we share the reception. She said it'd become a great way for us to become sisters and that this will mean the world to my brother. In reality, I know that they aren't financially well off and she wants the fancy wedding without the fancy wedding price tag. I didn't really know what to say, but I told her that's mine and my fiance's wedding. We planned it for us and we want it to be about us. She exploded in anger and said I wouldn't understand how hurtful it is to see the amazing wedding that I'm planning and know that she couldn't have something like that. I told her I waited to get married so that I could afford the wedding I wanted. And she said she wants to get married before she's old and dried up like some people. She called me heartless and a selfish bitch. I stormed off and my brother called me a few days later. He asked if I could please reconsider. I told him I didn't want to share my wedding day and I wasn't sure if I even wanted his fiancé there. I have 2 kids, a daughter who's 30 and a son who's 27. Their mother isn't in the picture. I have a relatively high-earning job and I was able to save $100K for each child to send them to college. My daughter received a full scholarship where her tuition and board was paid for, but I had to pay for my son's education and living expenses with the money I saved up. Both of my children knew I saved $100,000 for each of their college expenses, but my daughter got a full ride and I told her I'd hold on to it until she wanted to use it for her wedding or a down payment for a house. So when my daughter asked me last week to buy a house, I gladly gave her the money. A few days later, I got an angry call from my son accusing me of favoritism and how I'm being unfair. I tried to explain to him that I just gave her the college fund I was saving up for her, which was the same amount as what I've given him for college. He still thinks I should have split the money evenly so it'd be more fair. So both of my kids are fighting right now. The money has always been my daughter's and I already gave my son his share to pay for his college expenses. Both of them are college educated with good jobs, so it's not like my son desperately needs the money. So you guys tell me, am I the asshole in this case? Should I just split the money? When I was 15 years old, I found out I was pregnant with twins. My boyfriend at the time was 21 and had nothing to do with me. When he knew I wasn't going to give them up for adoption or abortion, he walked away. My mom was disappointed, but she helped me throughout my entire pregnancy and my delivery. A few weeks before my due date, my boyfriend texted me saying he broke up with this girl and that he wanted to get together and he was going to try to become the best dad he can. After the twins were born, it was blissful for a few moments until my mother started becoming toxic. She would take them places without my knowledge and I would wake up to an empty house not knowing where my kids were. She started overriding my decisions and when I confronted her, she told me she knew better because she was an adult. And I was in no position to contradict her. After years of this happening, I finally had enough and I managed to get enough money to afford a hotel for a couple of nights while I decided what to do. I asked my aunt to watch my kids for a few days so I can go out and find a job. And when I returned to the motel, they were gone. All of them. Hey guys, this is actually a story one of you guys sent in from your own personal experiences, so they'll be in the comments looking for advice, so please be nice and look forward to part 2. My boyfriend and I have been on and off for about 4 years. We've had our share of problems that stem mostly from his parents. He comes from a very upper class family and we met when I was just waitressing and he was in college for a high paying job. 6 months ago, I gave birth to a very much unplanned but beautiful baby girl. Of course, his parents were pissed about this and from the start of my pregnancy kept trying to say that they didn't think it was my boyfriend's baby. But when our daughter was born, they became amazing grandparents. They always offered to keep her tons when we needed breaks and it really helped us out and they would always buy things for her, returning her with new outfits, bottles, toys, and etc. So anyways, a few days ago my boyfriend came home and he was in a pretty bad mood. He didn't want to tell me, but in the end he decided it was best if I knew. His parents let it slip that they had taken our daughter to get a DNA test about a month after she was born. Of course the results came back that my boyfriend was the father, but he was pissed that they would even do something like this without our consent. I was livid. I called his parents and immediately told them that they were cut off. I don't need them or their money and I'm disgusted that they would stoop so low. They apologized and said they only wanted what was best for their son and they can't blame me for trying to be good parents. My husband and I were expecting our first daughter and he suggested the name Tiffany and I fell in love. When I asked what made him pick it, he said he saw it in a movie. I didn't think much of it and so a couple weeks later I called my sister-in-law to let her know we're going to name our daughter Tiffany. She was super surprised because she said she never wanted to name her child after her husband's high school girlfriend. I was really confused, but then she told me that they were together from sophomore year of high school to junior year of college. I knew he had a long-term relationship, but I never knew the girl's name. After hanging up, I confronted my husband and he tried blowing it off at first, but eventually admitted that it was true. I told him I'm refusing to name my daughter after his ex-girlfriend, and he told me it's too late, I'm overreacting, and I can't change my mind since I'm only due in 5 more weeks. I basically cried to get as much information as I can when he finally told me that she had contacted him because she was getting married and was having second thoughts. My husband admitted that talking to her made him realize he never stopped having feelings for her, but he loved me too. The reason he suggested the name was because he knew he couldn't leave me to be with her, so he wanted something to honor her with. What do I do? When I was in my 20s, I froze 10 eggs. When my husband and I were ready to have kids, I ended up getting pregnant naturally. I'm currently 35 and had my baby a year ago. We do want 2 more children, so we will likely use a few of the eggs. My sister, who is 30, has a 12-year-old daughter and has recently gotten married. Even though she was young, my sister's first pregnancy was a struggle. She's been told that she will probably not be able to have another baby. So her and her husband asked me if they can have 1 or 2 of my stored eggs. I instantly told her no, I would feel really weird about it. I then told her if she paid me a substantial amount of money, I would let her have 2 eggs. I gave her a price of $5,000. She's really torn up and blaming me for not being able to enjoy sharing a child with her husband. I told her she can find a donor egg somewhere else, but she said she wants a baby related by blood. If she can't afford $5,000 for the egg, she can't afford another baby. She has now gone to whine to any family member that will listen. My parents have been begging me to help my sister start a family. They said if her husband decides to leave her because he wants kids, it'll be my fault. Other people have been calling me to shame me for not giving her the eggs. I feel for my sister, but these are my eggs. I was 21 when I found out I was pregnant with twin girls. My sister is 28 and has had 14 miscarriages. She's only had 1 successful pregnancy, which resulted in my 4-year-old niece. I'm not against having kids, but I definitely wanted to wait until I graduated with my degree and I was married to my significant other. From the start, my mom has been saying I should give my babies to my sister since she deserves them more than I do. And my sister completely agrees. I told them hell no, and my mom calls me a selfish bitch. Throughout my pregnancy, my sister has been begging me to give her at least 1 baby since I'm having 2. The last time I saw her, we were having lunch and she started babbling about keeping one of my babies, so I paid for my meal and left and haven't seen any of them since then. After I have my girls, I log on to Facebook to hundreds of threatening messages from my family and friends about how I stole my sister's babies and ruined her life. She posted a picture of her nursery that she had for my babies. There's so many posts about how generous I am for going through the pregnancy and giving my sister the babies. She told everyone I was giving her my babies, and she has my pictures of them in the NICU saying how she can't wait to bring them home.